Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Coffee Club. Well, first part of this week's edition of Coffee Club, we thought we'd do a little two-parter given it's the end of the season. It's been a long few months, we're into the last week, there's a lot going on, Bill. We thought we'd do a little two-parter. Maybe we'd do the first one talking about all things Rangers and what's going on there, what has gone on there in the last few weeks and what could be coming in the next week or so. We're going to talk about Cup Final, Derek McInnes, Napoli, Championships, Europa League final. We'll do that tomorrow, but thought we'd have a little chat today about Rangers and things seem to be progressing there. We'll come to Barry Ferguson in a minute because you've got big thoughts on how Barry was treated there in the final days at Rangers, but it looks as though things are progressing. I've got a story this morning that Russell Martin and Steven Gerrard are looking like the front runners, albeit there are others still being kind of kept in the holding zone, if you want to put it that way. But in a minute, for me, those two are looking like the two front runners. How do you think about things and how things could look like they could be going at Rangers?
Well, I always trust your reporting on these things. And if Russell, he says,
he laughed. If
Russell Martin and Steven Gerrard are the two front runners, I would be concerned for Rangers. I don't think Russell Martin's the guy. I know he has a style of football that people like, the possession-based football, and it did well at Swansea and MK for that. But I think at Southampton it was a disaster at a top level. The how slowly they played out for the back, how easily they were caught out, and it set up Southampton to be one of the poorest teams in English Premier League history. I don't think that's a great audition for someone. I'm not sure whether the fact that he had a spell at Rangers has anything to do with this, whether that brings him, or whether it's just his style that brings him, style of play. I think his style.
I think he's got an identity. I think that's one thing. He's got an identity as a manager, as a coach. That he's got. His teams have an identity. Whether you don't think that's maybe suited.
I think there are identities that will work far better. I do think. Here's a thing about Rangers at their best, and that when they had their good spells in this season, they've not been very often. Generally in Europe. And against Celtic, has been when they've been out of possession teams coming at them and they counter attack. Now, if you play Russell Martin's way and it works, that can be very successful. You draw teams in, you ping behind them, you use your pace.
Yeah, but teams that are going to sit in at Ibrox, he maybe thinks they might struggle, and that happens a lot.
That happens a lot. So, in the big games, it can work, but it already works in the big games because they've already had two guys in Felix Clement and Barry Ferguson who have done that very successfully. It would depend. Listen, the biggest thing, if you have an identity, you need the players to make that identity, to transfer that identity from a theory into practice. Now, will Russell Martin get the back three or whatever he needs with, and the holding midfielders and the passing players and the pacey wingers that he needs to make that happen in time for it to happen? That would be my question, because whoever comes in, Barry Ferguson made the point, we've made the point, everybody makes the point, Doug's in the street make the point, this is not a project.
No.
You get no time.
No.
If the new guy comes in and he's still trying to settle this in October, he's in trouble.
No, that can't happen.
So that can't happen. Now, Steven Gerrard, the other one's been there, course and distance, been over the course, won the league with them, hero with the fans, left, didn't do particularly well at Aston Villa, kind of disappeared off the radar, and Saudi a little bit, but he still is who he is in the eyes of the Rangers fans.
You see, that's it. That's the issue I've got. He is who he is because everyone thinks about him as Steven Gerrard, the name.
Yeah.
And I think that's the pulling power that he has. Yes. I think, for the life of me, I can't really understand why Steven Gerrard would be a good appointment for Rangers, if I'm being honest with you.
I think that would have two of them, to be quite honest.
I think he did well to win the league. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, Rangers were under a lot of pressure to win that league, and he did it. And I think you have to you get praise for that, and you take your hat off for him for the job he did.
And they went through the league unbeaten.
And they did. They did. But I don't know. I just one trophy, 9 throughout his time at Rangers.
I don't see it either.
Yeah, I think, and I'm not a big fan, particularly of clubs going back the way. I think Rangers need to be trying to look forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's as I say.
Yeah, but that story for me. If I was a Rangers fan, I'd be saying, all right, okay. I'm not, it doesn't like when Davide Ancelotti's name came up, you kind of thought, oh, a minute, there's a bit of out of the box thinking. There's a guy who's got great connections. There's a guy who has been left to do most of the on the field coaching at Real Madrid and places like that, and you think, whoa, this boy could be just, but that seems to have cooled.
Well, I think, I'm led to believe that there was genuine interest there. We spoke about this last week. We reported about it in the paper as well. There was credible reports from Italy and Spain. They absolutely had a conversation. I think they've come to the conclusion that it's maybe just a little bit too early for Davide Ancelotti, which you kind of understand. As I say, I've done a story this morning about Gerrard and Martin.
Yes.
I mean, I wrote that Russell Martin was he was the one name that was given to me the day that Philip Clement was sacked.
Yes.
That name hasn't gone away.
No.
You know, I've been consistently saying it here. So the fact that he's very much still in contention tells me that there's some feeling there that he's, and we can argue the rights and wrongs of someone like Russell Martin, but that's been a number of months now.
Absolutely.
And he's been there. I know for a fact he's had other opportunities that he's let pass.
What does your gut tell you about what's going on just now?
My gut tells me that I'm not saying they don't know what they're doing. I think they do know what they're doing, but I think there are so many moving parts. And that's me. I think you have to cut them a fair degree of slack. Rangers guys there at the minute. There's obviously the takeover going on just now, which is a huge issue and situation. It's not even in the background. It's in the forefront of what's going on there.
Yeah.
So that's happening at one side of the table, and at the other side of the table, you've got Kevin Thelwell there trying to. It's not so much the board. That's the other issue of it. You've got board members there who are
a bit like the players in the dressing room. They're not going to be there.
They're not going to be there. So Kevin Thelwell's there, Patrick Stewart's there, and they're kind of working on kind of both. So I think you have to cut them a degree of slack that things haven't maybe progressed, albeit the season's just finished. We'll come to Barry Ferguson and how he was treated. You've got strong feelings in that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of moving parts, clearly. And I just wonder, as I say, Steve Gerrard's name hasn't gone away, Russell Martin's name hasn't gone away. I think as much as I'm saying that those two are the front runners, and that's what I've been told, I think there will be other guys, as I say, been held in the hold. Do you know what I mean? Circling the holding pattern right now. Stand by your phone.
Well, how many times have we seen
because
this
that
in
happens.
football where in our game we're given, by the way, this is the nod, this is what's happening, and at the time when somebody tells you that, it is absolutely what's going to happen.
It's still the case. Nobody's told me otherwise.
And then tomorrow Russell Martin gets an offer from blah blah United.
I think there's still a lot of water that has to go under the bridge before they get to the point where someone's holding a scarf.
These are the two.
I'm fairly convinced that these are the two that are having conversations.
If that is the case, I wouldn't be. If I was Celtic, I wouldn't be overly frightened at the moment, because Russell Martin has to come in and impose that identity. And as you say, Steven Gerrard was there and left, and comes back and has to repeat what he did before. He has to.
Yeah.
You know, you win the league before, you bring him back. It's like Brendan Rodgers. You know, he had to come back and win the league.
Yeah. At the same time, I think people at Celtic will be having one eye on what's happening at Rangers now. But what to do with the takeover, because these guys who are coming in.
Yeah, they're going to throw some.
It's not so much they're going to throw some. I think if you're going to say big money at it, they're clearly going to throw money at it to a certain extent. But they're serious people, Bill. You know, these guys, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They genuinely know what they're doing, and I think there's an acceptance from conversations I've been having that Celtic are kind of expecting change at Rangers. You know, they're expecting a bit of a considerable bigger challenge than they've been getting.
But for instance, the 49ers.
But at the same time, Celtic are in a very good position. You know, so
and Rangers are, and the 49ers were able, for instance, Leeds didn't go up last season, and they were able to absorb that because people say, okay, it's a really hard league to get out of, and blah blah blah. Maybe they could do another season in the Championship. And this season they've gone up and it's fantastic. And next season I think Leeds United will be a terrific team. I don't think there's any possibility of them being relegated. I think they'll move on. But you don't get that season here. Glasgow, you don't get that. And I'm not saying that if they don't win the league next season then it's been a disaster, because Celtic are obviously going to start the season as favourites.
Yeah.
But they have to be an awful lot closer than they were this season. And I'm not sure that they've got all the bits in place. As you say, there's so many moving parts. They haven't started on transfer. They have internally. There's no sign of any movement transfer-wise, in or out.
Well, Liam Balogun this morning confirmed that he's leaving.
Yeah.
He's put a statement out this morning. Pretty expected in all fairness. He spoke last week about being prepared to wait and want to stay. Yeah. But he's a guy who's 37, I think, next month.
But if you're sitting there as 37-year-old Liam Balogun, who's been a tremendous player for Rangers, and if you're sitting there as a 49er, so you're going to say, I know he's a tremendous player, but he's 37, and we're coming with a new broom. That's a kind of expected one, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's someone making a decision on a player, not a manager.
Yeah.
Someone who's making a decision who isn't the manager on players.
On players.
You know, and maybe that's the way it is these days. It's I think we need to get our head round that it's Kevin Thelwell, it's Patrick Stewart looking at the squads, he's out of contract, we'll let him go. Or are they having conversations behind the scenes with people as well who've got an impact on it? I don't know. But
I would imagine
that's a decision that's been made by someone.
These days, in terms of the way managers are interviewed, and I don't know whether either of these guys have been interviewed, spoken to at some point.
They have been.
But the depth of the interview now, it's not just tells your hopes and dreams.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't know whether if they're speaking with Russell Martin or saying, right, Russell, if you're coming in next week, and you want to keep Liam Balogun.
I would want to know if I've got an interest in coming to the club as manager, I'd want to say to them, by the way, there's some players there that I would like to move on, and here's an idea of the kind of players I'd like to bring in. Yeah. What do you think? And if I found out right away from Patrick Stewart, sorry mate, that's not going to happen, then we're not a good fit, are we?
Yeah.
So there must be these conversations.
Yeah, there had been, obviously, because say Liam Balogun's away with a heavy heart, it seems, because he very much wore his heart on his sleeve at Rangers.
But isn't it at the same time, he's a smashing guy, he's a smashing player, he's done really well for Rangers. Isn't it an indictment on Rangers, where they are, that it's a 37-year-old guy that they bring back for a second time, who is their, if you take John Souttar out of it, the only other defender you could really trust on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That's the level that's the depth of where they have to build from.
Listen, here's a question for you. However it shakes down, do you think Rangers fans should be optimistic about what's coming? Because I think they should be. I think with the change that's coming, clearly there is going to be night and day change at the club coming soon, in terms of the board, in terms of the manager, in terms of players. Do you think Rangers fans should be wary of what's coming? For me, they should be excited. I think there's a, there should be optimism on what's coming at Rangers.
You see, it's much easier for us on the outside.
Yeah, to say that. Yeah.
Because, my feeling is, and I've said this for a long, long time now, I think Rangers, I need to say this in the right way, need to move away from the club being run by what you would call Rangers men, people who make emotional decisions, and who, I think they need people who make
business decisions.
The way Celtic have made. Now, Celtic probably have, still people on the board who would say they're Celtic minded, whatever. But it's not like the old days at Celtic where it was nobody could tell them that anything was wrong. It was just Celtic this, Celtic this, Celtic this all the time. And Rangers are a bit like that. They put the wagons in the circle too much. They're too defensive about the club. And I think the club needs to move on. I think the club needs to move on. It needs to change its culture a lot. And I think
at the same time, though, Bill, I mean, the board guys who came in at the time they came in, I think they deserve a huge amount of kind of credit for.
Some of them do,
for turning up. You know what I mean? Because obviously there was so much going on at Rangers at that time.
Yeah.
Someone had to pony up.
Absolutely.
And they did.
And look at the effect it had on John Bennett.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Look at the difficulty they had in filling the chief executive's place and finding a permanent chairman. That the pressure that was on guys, and I think eventually an awful lot of people sitting round about that Rangers boardroom backed away and says, I don't want my head above the parapet here, because this is a state. Now they're starting to build that, Fraser Thornton and Patrick Stewart, and they're gradually building a new culture, and I think the 49ers have to come in and continue that, and create a Rangers that's built on the heritage of the club and using the status of the club and the size of the club in a positive way, and really building the way they have at Leeds United, where they've taken the traditions of Leeds United and they haven't scrapped anything, but they've moved things forward. They've made it more modern, more forward thinking. That's what Rangers need, but forward thinking. Yeah.
Well, obviously, since we last spoke, Barry Ferguson, it's been confirmed is not staying at Rangers. We pretty much felt that all along. I think from day one, we both spoke from day one.
And he probably did as well.
Yeah, but we felt pretty sure that he wasn't going to get the job, albeit. I mean, you're saying he didn't think so. I think when he got himself into the dugout, he was probably thinking, this is my chance to get the job.
It was his chance, yes.
I think he did a decent job. I know results weren't great. I think that was more to do with the players and the culture within that dressing room right now. As much as it was Barry Ferguson, Neil McCann, Billy Dodds. I think they went in there and did a credible job under extremely difficult circumstances. I think they were right to feel as though they had a chance of getting the job, and I quite liked how Barry kind of threw his hat in the ring and said, no, I'm the man, I can't change it here. I liked that.
I liked the way he handled himself, Jim.
Yeah, 100%. I I thought he...
And I think Neil McCann in particular proved himself to be a pretty good coach.
Yeah.
He probably did himself a lot of good.
I've said it here before, I think the three of them are wasted in press boxes and media boxes, and I think all three should be getting back into the game, and I think only two of them will try and do that. I don't think Barry will get back in the game. No. I think he's going to be happy to return as an ambassador, although I think Dodgy and Neil McCann will try and get back in the game, and I hope they do actually, because I genuinely think they've got a lot to offer. The question I was going to ask you though was, how was it handled by Rangers, the whole Barry Ferguson thing, in the end?
In the end, classlessly. I thought it was awful. I saw the tweet coming out on Sunday basically, and I thought it was going to be a little link into something big, but it wasn't. It was just, by the way, that's them off now. Thanks for popping in, chaps. Off you go. Have a lovely summer.
What should they have done then?
I think
they played devil's advocate.
I think they should have made the decision before the last home game of the season, announced it before the last home game of the season, and let Barry and Neil and Billy and Alan McGregor take the applause from the fans, because the fans have taken to them.
Yeah.
You know, as kind of one of their own kind of thing. And Barry and all of his backroom staff have given everything they've had for those, whatever it was, 6 or 7 weeks. And I think they deserved the chance to say, that's us off now, thanks very much. But instead, after the last game, I mean, the last thing, Barry Ferguson's last comments to the media as Rangers manager are about why we need goal line technology. Not about how it's been a pleasure being here and I can't wait to see what happens next. I thought it was really poor. And listen, I was one of the ones that said I didn't think Barry Ferguson was the right man for Rangers, but I thought the way it was handled was really, really poor.
Yeah. Do you think he's obviously returning to be an ambassador at the club, the kind of job that he did, and the kind of role he had before he was asked to be caretaker manager. Do you think he'll be that bothered that the way, if you think it's been handled poorly?
Would you be?
I don't know. I think he'd be more disappointed that he's maybe not been taken more seriously in terms of being a candidate for the job. I get the impression that's maybe what's happened. I get the impression that despite what he's said and despite how passionately he's put himself out there in terms of making it very clear they wanted the job, I'm not really sure that he was listened to. I'm not really sure that people at the club genuinely...
Well, he made the point...
I could be wrong.
He made the point, didn't he, that if I wasn't Scottish,
that's
they
true.
might have taken me more seriously. I personally think if I was coming in as one of the 49ers people and I was looking for people to link me to the board and the dressing room, Barry Ferguson would be one of the people I'd be looking for, and it wouldn't be as a club ambassador, it would be something within...
Can't do that.
Why not?
You saying your manager comes in and brings him back. I think we've spoken about this before.
Not Barry Ferguson, not as director of football or anything like that. But say for instance, you look at...
No, but as a coach or...
No. I don't know what the role would be, but...
You're just making jobs up now. Come on.
Why not? Well, look at the job. Say for instance, right, at our club, Tony Fitzpatrick, right? He's not. He's nominally, he was called chief executive, but he was the guy who dotted between dressing room and knew where things were.
With the best ball in the world, that's okay at a club like St Mirren. That's okay. I hate
here's
saying
a question
that, but that's the truth.
Do you not think there's a role somewhere for Barry Ferguson at Rangers that would help the 49ers?
No.
You don't?
No,
okay.
Unless he's a manager.
Okay.
I don't think it works. I don't think it works if he's any more than a guy who goes in and does the lounge and stuff. I don't think if you're a manager you could have someone like Barry Ferguson who you know wanted the job, who you know or who you might think would have been capable of doing the job. He certainly thinks he's capable of doing the job. I don't think you could have somebody there.
People talk to each other. So
I also don't think Barry Ferguson would want to do that.
Well, that's fine if he doesn't want to.
I don't think he would want to do that.
My thought was that if you look at, for instance, look at Crystal Palace winning the cup at the weekend, right? Mark Bright sitting there next to the owner. And Mark Bright
that's just an ambassador role. That's the same thing. It's what Barry's going to be returning to.
No,
he's the guy that shakes hands in the director's box.
No, Mark Bright does a lot more than going out of hospitality suites. He's involved. He knows the club. He knows the players. He knows how things work.
I actually think it would be a bigger slap in the face to Barry Ferguson if they did offer him that. Okay. I think it would be a bigger slap in the face if they say, Barry, we don't want you to be the manager, but tell you what, we want you to be a kind of a liaison officer between the manager and players we want to sign. We want you to kind of sell the club. Nah. Come on, it's Barry Ferguson, the guy who's a proud captain in the club who wanted to be the manager. I think that would have been worse.
Okay.
I just think.
I think it's a real shame when you get somebody with that much love and knowledge and experience of a club, and you just say, well, if you can't be a manager, you can't be anything.
No, he's going to be the ambassadorial role. He's getting back to that, whatever that is. Yeah, but what you're saying, I don't know. I
think the ambassador thing worked before he was manager. I think you go back to the ambassador. I don't know. I don't know if that's.
I've said it before. I just think it's a real shame that Barry hasn't got his managerial juices flowing again and thought to himself, I want to be in the game.
Yeah.
And I actually wonder if that's counted against him. This is a guy who said he wanted to be the Rangers manager, but no other manager.
Aye.
You know what? I think if you're a club like Rangers, you're thinking, oh, we want somebody. I don't know. I could be wrong if that's maybe part of it.
So do you
just thinking out loud.
So
I would love to hear Barry say, do you know what? I really want to be a manager now again.
So if you're Barry, if you're Barry Ferguson, who's managed at Alloa, Kelty, Clyde.
Yeah, his CV doesn't.
No, but what I'm saying is, he's now had a little taste of Rangers, which is the job he dreamed of all his life.
What would his next job be?
So would his next job be Kilmarnock? You know.
Yeah, potentially, yeah.
You know, would you?
Yeah, you can't tell me that Barry Ferguson, say for instance, and this is no disrespect to anyone, least of all the name I'm going to mention, but if Stephen Naismith ends up becoming the next Kilmarnock manager, you can't tell me he's got so much more credentials than Barry Ferguson.
I'm not saying. I'm just asking whether you think. Do you think Barry Ferguson is of a mind that if Kilmarnock...
No, he's not of a mind that. He's clearly stated, unless he gets his arm twisted now, he's clearly, for me, stated that he doesn't want to be a manager. That's what I've heard him say, and that's the point I'm making. I find that disappointing. I think Neil McCann and Billy Dodds have always just been doing the media work as a part-time gig while they're
and
out
also
to
keep their name in the frame.
And keep their name in the frame. Listen, they've got bills to pay like everyone else. But I do, and it's interesting, like as well, like Neil McCann. When these jobs are flying around, I've not heard Neil McCann's name mentioned or Billy Dodds' name mentioned. Should they be? I think they've got a lot to offer. I think these guys could do a job at Kilmarnock.
I mean, but Neil goes back into working in the agency side. He does a bit of media stuff.
He does a wee bit of everything, Neil. But I don't know. Listen, it's just. But with Barry, I feel disappointed for him. I think he at least deserved. And I could be wrong on this, that he maybe didn't get the opportunity. I don't think he got the opportunity to sit down with Patrick Stewart, Kevin Thelwell, and people in authority at Rangers and said, this is what I would do. Literally, here's my presentation on what I would do in the short term, medium term, and long term at Rangers.
He was very much a caretaker.
I think he was very much a caretaker, and I think that's where he was let down. I don't have a major problem with the way it was handled at the end. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I don't think that's what will annoy him or frustrate him. I think what will frustrate him, and what would frustrate me if I was Barry Ferguson, that he wasn't afforded the opportunity to sell his plan.
Yeah, absolutely, but I think
because he said he had a plan, but did he actually? They said, Barry, let's hear it. Let's the same way they're going to do with candidates that they're interested in. Because I wonder, and I think someone who's, if I do believe that someone who's been in the job for 8 weeks will have a real grasp of what needs to be done.
I think the reason I'm really disappointed with Rangers over the way they handled it, and the reason I call it classless, is I think it says an awful lot about the kind of people who put the message out. And I think the 49ers might look at that and say, we need to be better than this. We need to be better than this. We need to be more respectful of what people do for this club. And I thought that was a very disrespectful way to say cheerio to Barry Ferguson.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I certainly wish Barry well. I think he handled himself extremely well, as did the coaches who are working with him. I think they just, from what I can gather, they've been kind of kept in limbo. They've not been given any, or they weren't given any real information on what was going on. They weren't given any real they weren't really encouraged. They weren't encouraged.
Yeah, that's a shame.
I don't think they ever felt they were in real contention with the job, and I think they at least deserved an opportunity to kind of put down and pretty much present what they would have done for Rangers. Cause who knows?
Yeah.
They might have said or done something that actually went, you know what? Yeah. Do you know what? This is actually.
We'll steal a bit of this.
No, but this actually makes sense. You know. And I say he's got an understanding of Rangers. But listen, it's water under the bridge. He's no longer.
And we shall see over the next couple of days, maybe.
We will.
Week, whatever.
We will see.
What happens next, and everything we've said here might turn out to be complete nonsense.
No doubt.
When they appoint. Davide Ancelotti's dad leaves Brazil after 3 days to go to Rangers.
Yeah, time will tell. Well, listen, we thought we'd do a quick Tuesday coffee club this week to talk about that. We're going to be back tomorrow to talk about all things cup final, Celtic against Aberdeen at Hampden on Saturday. We're going to talk about Dermot Kinnis. We're going to talk about Napoli's chances of winning Scudetto in Italy. We're here at Bella Vita. We've got a Napoli fan just down the road there. We might we might ask his opinion.
And I think we might have a wee argument about the Europa League.
We're going to have a little argument about Ange Postecoglou, but anyway, keep in touch with scottishsun.co.uk, online, all the social media channels, and of course in the newspaper, what's happening at Rangers and everyone else in Scottish football right now.